Are you ready for your first author to kick things off? Your first author is a regular contributor to our show. Please welcome to the stage the author of The Princess, the Peasant, and the Mystery Knight, Mr. Bobby Gerbowski.
Hey guys. All right, hey, so happy to be here, happy to be back. This book, it's called The Princess, the Peasant, and the Mystery Knight. It's dedicated to my daughter, Samantha. It's for you, honey. There we go. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess named Samantha. She lived in a big old nice castle with the king and the queen. The king was a pretty good guy. He was tall and handsome and everything, but he wasn't Princess Samantha's real daddy. Her real daddy was the former king, who the queen, who was basically a demon dressed up like a woman, threw out. Now he lived down in the peasant village in a tiny efficiency hut and spent his days plowing fields and his nights working leather. Princess Samantha barely knew her real daddy because the freaking queen would never let him in the castle gates unless he paid all the princess back support he owed. Even the king tried to convince her that it wasn't right, but poor little peasant daddy could barely afford a night of gruel off of what he was making at his 2 jabs. But the queen had a heart of stone and wouldn't listen to reason. Anyway, Princess Samantha had a pretty good life there inside the castle. She had all the best tutors and was learning how to ride horses and sew and be a real proper lady and all that. 3 times a year, the king and the queen would take her on vacation to faraway fantasy lands where she'd meet all kinds of elves and gnomes or whatever. Meanwhile, poor little peasant daddy was getting fired from his plowing job because he threw his back out trying to dig the dang thing out of the mud. Of course, he should have seen it coming. It's not like he ever got any sympathy in his life. Not from his parents and certainly not from his ex-wife, the queen. So things just kept snowballing like that in the Enchanted Kingdom. Princess Samantha was getting older and getting busier with school and archery and everything. And she was thinking about poor little peasant daddy less and less. In fact, she even started calling the king dad, which everybody knew was mostly the queen's doing since that's exactly the kind of thing she got off on. Sometimes Princess Samantha would look out her tower window and wonder whatever happened to her real dad. One day she asked the queen, "Hey there, mommy, didn't I used to have another daddy? The one that was always crying and the guards would drag away after a couple hours?" And the queen said, "Get this. The king is your father. That was just some village idiot that got kicked in the head by a mule. Besides, he's dead now anyway. Go to your room." Okay. Things got real bad for poor little peasant daddy after that. He started drinking mead all night and not showing up at work. One time he even tried to climb the castle walls and the knights just beat the living crap out of him. So one night, on the way out the door of the tavern, he saw a scroll on the wall about a knight's tournament being held at the castle the next day with 1,000 gold piece prize. Somehow, in his mead-induced haze, poor little peasant daddy convinced himself he could enter the tournament, get inside the castle walls, win the thing, get the prize, pay off his debt, and reunite with Princess Samantha. By the time he got back to his efficiency hut, reality had sunk in. He wasn't no knight. He didn't own a lance or armor or a horse. Truth be told, it wouldn't help if he did on account of his bad back and all-around lack of physical prowess. There's no way he could win the tournament. I just want to say how happy I am today. I got invited back here for an anniversary show. I was getting real down on myself, and I don't get invited a lot of places, and I don't know. I've been thinking about killing myself, and this a night like this goes well, that's going to put me about 50-50. Poor little peasant daddy slipped into a real bad place then. He was lying on the floor, bawling his freaking eyes out, praying to whatever gods might be merciful enough to take his pathetic life. Just then there was a little flicker of light up on the table, and this little fairy mouse thing appeared. And it said, "Hello, I am a fairy creature thing, and I come to you in your time of need." Of course, poor little peasant daddy assumed this was just another meat and depression-induced hallucination, but he figured he was in no position to turn down the help. "What are you going to help me with?" he asked. "By turning you into a knight for one day to win the tournament and reunite with the princess," the fairy mouse thing said. "Why would you want to help me?" poor little peasant daddy asked, still suspicious of the little creature. "Because the queen is an evil person and an enemy to all things good, and I'll just get a kick out of seeing the look on her face when you do it." The next morning, fairy mouse thing used its magic to turn poor little peasant daddy's clothes into armor, his mug of mead into a lance, and a giant raccoon that had been living in his roof was turned into a mighty war horse. He even felt like he himself was transformed from the broken shell of a man he normally was into a mighty mystery knight, capable of winning the day. "Now remember, the spell will wear off after the tournament," the fairy mouse thing called as he rode off towards the castle. Inside the castle walls, all the noble people were gathered around the square, eating fancy foods, wearing nice clothes, ready to watch the knights knock the crap out of each other for their amusement. The king and queen were front and center. The king looked a lot older since the last time the mystery knight had seen him, most likely because the queen was using her evil magic to steal his life force for herself, because she, of course, looked as beautiful as ever. Princess Samantha was there too. She looked like a miniature version of the queen, except she was even more beautiful because she didn't have the cold, dead eyes of a lizard. The mystery knight was called to the battlefield and put across the way from a knight as big as a house with a dragon on his shield. The horn blew and the knights raced at each other. The mystery knight closed his eyes and wet his armor as he charged the field. And then, bang! He opened his eyes and he was still on his horse. The knight with the dragon shield was on the ground. The fairy mouse thing's magic was more powerful than he could imagine. He'd won his first joust. The rest of the first round of tournament went by, but the mystery knight didn't pay much attention. He was watching Princess Samantha. She looked so excited to be watching the knights, and he couldn't wait to talk to her. He won a second match. He even kept his eyes open when he won his third match. Soon it was time for the final one, the mystery knight versus the knight of the full moon. He was feeling confident. His back wasn't even bothering him all that much with the fairy mouse thing's magic. He was confident he could win. The horn blew, and the knights charged at one another and collided with a bang, but both remained on their horses. "Ah, geez, here we go," thought the mystery knight. He was starting to doubt himself again. The knights circled around and waited for the horn to blow again. When it did, they charged, and bang! The mystery knight felt his chest explode, but both men were still on their horses. He was scared now and offered to call it a draw. Okay, almost there. But the horn blew again, and on came the night of the full moon. The mystery knight threw up his hands in fear and screamed like a little friggin' baby. His lance went up, up, up into the air. Just before the night of the full moon was ready to strike, the lance came down, 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 and landed on his head. The night of the full moon fell from his horse, and the noble people cheered. The mystery knight had won the day. The noble people carried him on their shoulders to where the royal family was seated and cheered, "Hooray, the mystery knight, hooray!" He hadn't felt this good since the day Princess Samantha was born. And honestly, this was even a little bit better, because that day he'd met the new king and found out he was moving out of the castle. The noble people set the mystery knight in front of the king and queen and Princess Samantha. "Please remove your helmet so we may all know the name of the knight who has won the day and the 1,000 gold pieces," the queen said with that fake smile across her face. Mystery knight pulled his helmet from his head triumphantly, or he tried to. It got stuck halfway off. Made kind of a joke out of his announcement when he said, "'Tis me, Princess Samantha's daddy," in muffled words. "You gotta be kidding me," the queen said, more annoyed than shocked. The king laughed as poor little peasant daddy tugged and pulled and finally yanked the helmet from his head. Princess Samantha looked pretty embarrassed, and that didn't make him feel too good, but he figured she'd get over it. "You can keep the 1,000 gold. That should not only catch me up on my princess support, but probably even get me ahead," he said, regaining some of his confidence. "Fine, talk to my barrister," snarled the queen. "Princess Samantha will visit you next weekend. Now leave my castle." Poor little peasant daddy gave his daughter a big smile and a thumbs up. The princess just kind of covered her face and looked away, but hey, that's how kids are. The king gave poor little peasant daddy an approving nod until the queen looked at him, and then he acted like he was just stretching his neck. As poor little peasant daddy left the castle, the fairy mouse thing's magic wore off, and his armor turned back into raggedy clothes, his lance back to a mug, and his horse back into the raccoon, which immediately scratched the heck out of his leg and darted off. None of that mattered, though. He had won the day and was finally going to get to spend some time with his daughter. When poor little peasant daddy got back to his efficiency hut, he was shocked to see all of his belongings were gone. It ain't like he had much to begin with, but now there was literally nothing in the room. At first he thought he'd been evicted until he saw the note written in the dirt on the floor. It said sucker, signed Fairy Mouse Thing. Her whole spell was some elaborate plan to rob him. Oh well, he thought, shame on me for trusting somebody. Then next weekend, Princess Samantha came to visit, and even though she spent most of the day staring at her magic mirror and complaining about being bored, she was there with her poor little peasant daddy, and he was happy. I do want to say that parts of this story were based off of my life. And I hope my daughter gets to read this someday and she sees how her dad feels about her. I wrote this a while ago when she's graduating from college this year and kind of missed the mark, but thanks guys.